Okay, everybody. So we'll just get everyone's attention here. So after a couple delays, we're just gonna get started over here. So I want to welcome everyone to our 31st Vancouver Psychedelic Society meetup. Thank you guys for all coming out here. Today is our first hybrid type event where we actually are able to have all of you guys here in a physical space in the coffee shop, while also being able to extend everyone that's coming and joining us online. So again, thank you guys all for being here, and thank you for those of us joining us online. And of course, thank you to Matt Simpson, who's going to be giving us a wonderful and exciting, enthusiastic presentation on psychedelic medicine, flow states, and our deepest traumas. I'll get to introducing Matt in just a little bit. There's a couple of announcements I'm going to go through real quick. Firstly, I want to thank Damien for allowing us and extending this place to us so that we can host our meetup here. It's actually really amazing that for those of you who are online, you haven't seen the coffee shop. It looks like a massive red flower outside. It's very beautiful. And the inside actually is designed sort of like a mushroom. So it's just this kind of, if you look around, you can, I don't know if those of you guys online can see, you can't see from here, but yeah, it's really incredible. And I'm just thinking what kind of grand cosmic alignment it is that the Vancouver Psychedelic Society can just be here. You know, the stars really have aligned in a certain way. So again, thank you so much, Damien, for doing this for us. And again, there's also some free coffee for those of you guys who want some. It's really delicious. Yeah, and that's kind of our game plan for right now. Just to give you guys, there's a couple things. Firstly, we have a Discord channel. I'd like to announce this every time, but again, it's a, you know, if you guys haven't already, we really invite you to come join us. It's a chance to sort of continue the conversation with the group. Everyone's there. It's where we do all our community organizing and all that sort of stuff. So it's a lot of fun, and we have a lot of other things, hangouts and everything that we do on top of just the meetup. So this is really just the tip of the iceberg. So I really suggest you guys come chat with either myself or Kenny, our co-organizer, and then we can send you a link to get you in. As well, I also want to mention, just so you guys are aware, those of you online, we are recording this, so we put it out up on our YouTube channel. So if anyone has any major concerns with privacy, if you're online, you can turn your video off, or you can type the question, and then we can sort of ask it that way. Otherwise, just make sure that everyone that you are muted, just so that we don't have any sort of interference with any noise or anything like that. As well, I also want to mention that our layout is going to be just a little bit different here. When Matt gives his talk, he's going to be kind of sectioned it into two sections. So he's going to talk for a little bit, give his talk, and then we're going to have a little Q&A period. And then he's going to go through his next part. We're going to have a Q&A period, and then he's going to go to the last part and then have a Q&A period. So once that's all done, we're going to just kind of break into smaller groups over here, and then we'll see if we can maybe do that online for those of you online, so that way you can break into smaller groups over there. So that's kind of our plan going forward from here. So yeah, and please excuse us if there's any sort of any delays. This is our first time doing it, so if there's any technical issues or anything like that, just you know, give us a couple minutes so we can sort that out. But so far, it looks like it's going pretty well. And with that, I'd like to introduce Matt Simpson. So he's going to be giving us an enthusiastic presentation on psychedelic medicines, flow states, and our deepest traumas, and how they might just be our greatest hidden strengths. Matt serves as a transformational life coach.
Otherwise, just press pound.
Can we just make sure everyone's muted, please? Okay. And he serves as a transformational life coach, author, and is active in supporting suicidal war veterans. He will cover topics such as demystifying psychedelics, igniting hope, and fast-tracking personal growth. Matt, host of the Worth the Fight podcast and author of Worth the Fight, Acting for a Better World, a guide to spirituality, psychedelic medicine, and overcoming trauma, is going to lead this three-part presentation. So the three parts are integration as our highest form of spirituality. The next is flow, science, and belief, how flow might be key to unlocking our greatest potential. And the third is lessons from veterans, how our struggling but resilient war veterans can lead our human family to a global peace. Just about Matt has raised over 100K for US war veterans who are taking their own lives at a rate of 22 per day, and has helped facilitate over 100 psychedelic healing experiences for veterans to transition them from post-traumatic stress disorder to post-traumatic growth. All the profits from Worth the Fight book are being donated to veteran charities to further empower psychedelic healing in our warriors. Matt serves as a transformational life coach where he empowers disenchanted professionals to remove obstacles, redefine success, and reclaim mind, body, spirit harmony to live more impactful, service-driven lives. So again, Matt, I really want to thank you for coming here all the way from the States. And you're doing this on your birthday too, which is just incredible. That thank you for being there for us and opening the community up to your message and doing this on the stage. So thank you so much, and a huge happy birthday to you, and I hope many blessings for you. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Christoph. Thank you to the Vancouver Psychedelic Society. I'm so grateful for this opportunity to share the Worth the Fight mission and message of hope and healing to all of you. And yeah, I wish I was there. I've never been to Vancouver, and I'm here calling in from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, where I've been hosting the Milwaukee Psychedelic Society meetings since, February of 2020, since when the pandemic hit. Milwaukee has the distinction of being what I believe to be possibly the trauma capital of the free world, by virtue of a 2018 study that showed that we had 10 of the 20th drunkest cities in America here in the great state of Wisconsin, not too far from Canada. I've had an opportunity on my travels to meet a lot of beautiful Canadians. And again, I wish I was there in Vancouver. I haven't been there yet. And it would be wonderful to be doing this in person, but we'll make the best with calling in. And again, I want to thank Christoph and the gang for seeing the value in my work, in this in our message and mission of hope and healing. So what is Worth the Fight? What is this about? I want to share a little bit about, before we dive into those 3 talking points, and I love the idea that we can have this be an interactive presentation where, we can push this edge together. But I want to share a little bit about myself and my background and the motivation of what is inspiring, or what inspired Worth the Fight. It was back in 2014 that I had a profound healing with ayahuasca. I was doing the whole rat race thing. It was a few months earlier, actually. It was October 16th, 2014, my 35th birthday. I had sold a business that I had worked on for 7 to 8 years. I was doing the corporate America thing here in Chicago, or in the Midwest. And that night that I'd sold this business, while I was supposed to be celebrating with this new national corporation that had promised so much more opportunity and pay and responsibility, all I could think about was this path that I'm on right now. And 2 months later, I was down in the jungles of Costa Rica, having a deep transformational healing with ayahuasca. This was an opportunity for me to really lean into some of my past hurts. I had started addressing some deep childhood sexual trauma that I'd addressed 4 or 5 years earlier, and I thought that I'd covered that. But it turned out that there was much more healing to be done, and had a very profound visionary experience where I felt what I affectionately call the beyond love that I write about in my book, Worth the Fight. And I got very curious as to how is this possible that a 35-year-old man who's had a loving family, very good friends and community growing up, how is it that I felt love for the first time, again, in the jungles of Costa Rica, drinking a plant medicine with a bunch of strangers? So that has been a central driving question for me in my work. And ultimately, my healing journey that transformative experience I had in late 2014 led me to see a way out of the mess that I'd created in Chicago, in the corporate America world. I worked for 10, 11 months to untangle myself from that said mess. And then I ended up traveling with a backpack for 18 months to figure out my what and why. Well, to figure out the work that I'm here to do for the next 50 to 60 years. Had a unique situation of not having any children or significant other. Nothing was holding me down. I just sold a business and, said, peace out. I'm going to go take 18 months to figure out what is real for me. And in month 17 of the 18-month travel journey, I came across this veteran work that I'm going to be sharing with all of you today. And it was the I had a conversation with Ryan LeComp. He was the CEO of this organization called Veterans for Entheogenic Therapy. And it was the 150 veterans that had been through the program, upwards of 90% of them. It wasn't the arm that was missing. It wasn't the foot that was blown off in war. It wasn't losing a buddy in war. Time and time again, it's the childhood sexual trauma or deep child abuse that was at the root of the war trauma. So it wasn't the war trauma, but it appears as though this childhood trauma is driving our soldiers to seek tribe and to go to war in the first place. So with the 3 talking points that I'm going to be speaking on tonight, it's my earnest hope and prayer that all of you will glean a few actionable tips from the work that I've been doing as a psychedelic integration coach. I've been doing this for 3 years now, and I fancy Worth the Fight as a 308-page psychedelic integration program. And it's also my hope that we might be able to shift our mindset around pain and our traumas and our hurts and discomfort. The big part of my messaging is the degree to which we lean into our darkness, again, the pain, the adversity, the hurts from yesteryear, the trauma, is the very same degree to which we can stand and share and love in our light. And lastly, I'm a huge optimist for, although we're in some wildly precarious times, it's my hope that some of the hope that I have in my heart, I can impart to all of you about better days forthcoming, and for that better world all of our hearts know is possible. And hopefully we can channel some birthday love into this presentation as well. When Christoph originally reached out, I saw the date and I was like, yes, let's do this. All right, so I am going to dive into the first part of the 3-part interactive presentation, integration as our highest form of spirituality. I'm going to start this off with a Kelly Brogan, MD quote, where she says, "Integration is the highest form of spirituality in my estimation, simply because it requires a truce with all that you would rather split off, deny, and repress." Integrate means to make whole. And a big part of my travel journey was, again, untethered, 18 months, did a lot of psychedelics back in 2015, 16, 17. And I was seeing something that it was very troubling to see people not integrating their experiences. And while we have the freedom to, do what we will, it was kind of annoying to hear the same dramas and the same complaints coming up, and knowing and almost seeing like, the people that are not integrating these peak experiences, they're like a goldfish in a bowl chasing their tail. And I got very curious about that. And I think that motivated me to double down on my integration practices, because I saw the danger in this kind of getting high without focus on serving others or bettering ourselves, our communities, paying forward the grace of plant healing. And that was a big motivating factor into writing the book. And I just felt a sense of urgency. So what does integration mean? It means to make whole. And when we have these deep peak psychedelic experiences, where our heart is cracked open and we can, go to parts of ourselves and have insights that we normally don't have access to the level of consciousness. I love the way that Jason Silva, he talks about inverse PTSD, this notion that just as so many of us in the psychedelic space are healing from trauma because the Western medical model, it's failed us. So we've stepped outside the pale to heal and get right because the solutions that have been presented to us haven't worked. I know I tried everything on my path. And, I had a deep psilocybin experience in 2013 where, it was a profound experience with my friend Tony. I'm out on his boat and, I'm having a mystical experience. It feels like I have a cord coming out of my hip plugged right into the universe. And this is kind of funny. We took the same amount of mushrooms and Tony was obsessively cleaning his fridge. And I remember looking up and like, dude, that's the ninth time that you've wiped down the ketchup. Like, chill. So the notion that intentionality plays a huge part in the work that we're doing with these medicines. And while I came onto this path, recreationally, go into concerts and foster the people on mushrooms and this and that, I take a very earnest approach right now. And I think that things have changed with us being in a pandemic and we're on the clock with the climate crisis. And these are powerful medicines that when we're integrating them and maximizing the value, they can be very disruptive in terms of transformation and helping us to see the work that we're here to do and ultimately to be healthy, happy, and strong. But Jason Silva, a little bit of a digression there. Jason Silva, he talks about inverse PTSD and that notion that just as we have traumatic memories in our nervous system that we're healing from so often in the psychedelic space, these peak experiences are also in our nervous system. Those moments of enlightenment, of rapture, of bliss, of unbridled ecstasy, of supreme joy, those insights that we have at a peak psychedelic or ceremonial psychedelic experience, I believe are also in our nervous system. They're stored. I concur with Jason and this idea that they're in our nervous system, and it's our work on the day-to-day to extract those insights. And by implementing these integration practices, we can mine for that data, for those insights, that we experience on the peak psychedelic experience. There's 8 pillars to psychedelic integration, and these are just the 8 pillars that I've come up with. I'm sure that the next psychedelic integration coach is gonna maybe have some different pillars, but this is the approach that I've taken towards my coaching and essentially outlining the principles of Worth the Fight. First is integration theory, the idea that integration is just as important as the peak experience. It's a chicken and the egg to me. That if we're gonna have these deep, profound healing experiences, that we have the practices in place so we can ground that energy to be healthy, happy, and strong, and point that in the direction of service. The idea of having tribe, community, for me, therapy worked in the beginning, but then I found that coaching added a supreme value to me because my therapist didn't understand psychedelia. And that is something, as we're pushing out towards this edge, that I think that there's a major benefit for having a coach in your corner that understands this experience. For me, that's been invaluable on my path and my journey. And I've had, a psychedelic coach since 2016, and that's something that I would highly recommend. The other principles or other parts of integration theory is the notion of set and setting, and having reverence for these powerful state shifting compounds, and taking the time to be very intentional and to journal about what is it that we're seeking to get from the experience, and just to bring that intentionality. I think that is, and it serves as an anchor for the experience, and it's all of these strategies that I'm sharing right now are action based. There's a lot of talking. I think we can all agree there's a lot of talking in the psychedelic renaissance, and some of that can be very counterintuitive or counter to our growth. So these are action based strategies that many of them are proven scientifically to cultivate self-awareness, and that's ultimately the game that we're playing here is cultivating that self-awareness. The answers are all inside of us, and removing the blockages, the obstacles, so we can see and reveal the truth within. The foundational practices it's not sexy, but the foundational practices of meditation and movement are central to the work that I'm doing, and the shifts and the transformations that I've had. I would like to think that Worth the Fight is very anti-dogma, and this is the one thing that I might get a little dogmatic about, is I think that we need to have some kind of stillness in our lives in terms of meditation, even if it's 10 minutes a day, where we can see what's coming from our heart, what's coming from our gut intuition versus what's coming from our fickle monkey mind, and getting still, having our phone on airplane mode. There's a supreme value for the morning ritual that I found. My clients that buy into this process of first we create our habits and then our habits create us. That's really the only mantra that I work off of. But that take the first hour to 2 of their days to be very intentional. I find that the degree to which they're intentional with their morning ritual is the degree to which they thrive. So this is something, especially with the pandemic, and there's so much fear mongering and so much pain and hurt and suffering in our world. So taking that time to be very clear about what is it that we're trying to get accomplished in a given day. The movement, if you would have asked me years back, I would have said that the movement had to be yoga, but that again would have been me coming at you from a righteous standpoint, a dogmatic standpoint. And what I've seen is we all have 37.2 trillion cells that are begging to be moved, and it's find a way to move our bodies, whether it's fitness or yoga, or whether it's walks in nature, extreme sports, dancing, what have you. Find out what works for you and go do that. Another foundational practice is journaling. I think that there's a massive leverage point with journaling, there's a multiplier that makes our meditations that much more valuable. I would say that 80% of the ideas that I've come up with for my personal healing journey, Worth the Fight, the Worth the Fight podcast, the service work that I'm doing with our United States war veterans here in the States, 80% of the ideas have come through meditation, having a trusted journal right next to me afterwards. So there's a landing zone for my thoughts after my spiritual practices, or after my meditation and breath work, which is a good segue into the next pillar. I think that the Wim Hof breathing method is aligned so perfectly with the psychedelic renaissance. We can get high on our own supply, and it's free. It's underneath our nose. I trained with Wim and his team in Inner Fire in Poland in 2016, and this has been a game-changing practice for me that has helped me elevate my physical fitness and body to a degree that I never thought possible. While I'm not going to be doing, setting world records like Wim in terms, I think he's got 26 world records. I'm pushing my edge, and it's deeply rewarding to know that there's the scientific research that supports the Wim Hof method that shows that it reduces inflammation, that it reduces pain, increases our energy levels, and boosts our immunity, our immune system. Wim has a vision of our planet with no sickness and believes that all disease, dis-ease, is a byproduct of shallow breathing. And I think he would say, and I would agree, that, and also our economic values. In addition to the breathing, there's the three pillars to the Wim Hof method. One is this powerful breath work. The other is meditation and mindfulness. And the third is gradual cold exposure, which I just saw a study that showed that we have increased dopamine after an hour of being in 50 degree or 15 degrees Celsius water that lasts for 4 hours to up to a 200% increase. So there's some really awesome science about the value of getting in the cold, the hormetic value of finding in a healthy way, practicing discomfort. I'm going to talk later on about this awesome new book that I read recently, and I'm still trying to wrap my hands around what this means, called Dopamine Nation, Finding Balance in the Age of Indulgence. And there's a Stanford neurobiologist, Cheryl Lemke, that is talking about, that our dopamine systems have been hacked by this indulgent world that we live in. And basically she's promoting, and it supports, I love this neuroscience that's supporting my message of finding healthy ways to practice discomfort and healthy ways to find constructive pain so we can grow, because we can't be always on the pleasure side. And again, I will talk a little bit more about that throughout the presentation. Flow science is another pillar, which is a central part of the next talking point. So I'm going to save that, but just basically the idea that if we don't know what is possible, then we won't put in the work necessary to bring the flow into our lives. Fasting and intermittent fasting, I'm not a doctor. This isn't medical advice. None of this is medical advice, but I found that is low-hanging fruit. The science of the exponential science of autophagy that supports, 8 hours on, 8-hour feeding window, 16-hour fasts. I've been doing the 6 days of normal eating and then taking 1 day of fasting. That's also a protocol for the intermittent fasting. And I found that is exceptional for my energy levels. And that 1 day a week is my pain day. That's the day where I'm in flow the other days, but that's the day where I do my shadow work and I lean in, and some days are better than others, but I no caffeine, no cacao, no supplements that day. It's just water and a way to, just feels like that's the balance for me. I think microdosing psychedelics is a integration strategy. The idea that we're local and we can, the way that microdosing elevates and is a leverage point for our journaling, for our insights. And again, we're local, we're not dissociated. And there's a lot of buzz around microdosing right now. The risks are very low. And it's something that a lot of my clients have found extreme value in that. And I feel like there's a little bit of a turbo button in terms of how that helps them progress in a more accelerated manner. There's lots of talk around, Fadiman's protocol, Stamets protocol, and but that is something that I'm seeing here in the States that is a growing. People are very curious about it, and I think that's a good way that people can come onto this path. And the peak psychedelic experience, 5 grams of mushrooms, or the ayahuasca retreat in Central or South America, is not for everyone. And I wouldn't, I'd be naive to say that these peak experiences are a panacea. And there's, let's say another pillar is organic, raw, ceremonial cacao. This might be my favorite plant medicine on earth. and it's meant so much to me. I had a little bit before our presentation here, and the idea that the neurotransmitter anandamide is in raw organic ceremonial cacao. Anandamide is also in sativa, THC, and is associated with lateral thinking, outside the box thinking. For me, the most reliable way to get into a flow state is having a cup of this lovely cacao, and is something that I also attribute the superfood benefits to, being my physical body being a lot stronger. And something I highly recommend. It's purported as the most powerful natural antidepressants, or one of them on earth, and is something that complements nicely, I believe. It complements the psychedelic renaissance in a profound manner. And lastly, the last pillar is altruism. And I'll save that for sharing the Veteran Service Project and the work where I'm doing here in the States with our war veterans that are dropping like flies to suicide. There's 22 a day. That number's likely closer to 30 to 40. And, I've been in this space since 2017, advocating for them. And when I started focusing my efforts on serving others, it's as though my problems were reframed in such a profound manner that it's worth mentioning. And just that idea of we're paying the grace of plant medicine healing forward and serving others. That is the end of my first talking point, and we'd love to open this up to any questions that all of you have. And again, it's my earnest hope that there's a few tips and pointers that might be useful to all of you from that section of the presentation.
Excellent, excellent. So if anyone has any questions, can come up and queue up here, and you can actually talk right into the.
Yeah, I'll actually turn the video on.
Yeah. So you have a question? Yeah, come right up. Walk up here, Paul. You can come up here. If you want to ask questions, just queue up.
Matt, I also just wanted to ask you: Are you able to see the audience? Because I think one of our cameras.
I can't, and that's why I was kind of fumbling.
Okay. Yeah, I just wonder if we can maybe just turn it just so you can get a little bit of feedback from the audience too when you're talking, so you can.
That'd be
just
cool.
not-
Yeah. The camera that says Christoph, it's like if you put on the gallery view and
We could
Zoom,
put all right.
you should be able to see Christoph as one of those, and his computer is pointing at the whole room. I don't know if you're able to see that.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's gallery. Okay, awesome. Yeah, this is better. Thank you.
Cool. So, but yeah, Paul, step on up so you can. Yeah, I can set it so you can see. So he can see the question asker. So now you can line yourself up there.
Hey, Matt, happy birthday.
Thank you.
All right, quick question. I'm a Marine Corps vet. I'm from the US too, so your talk was salient to me. So my question is, people who are using psychedelics and not integrating, that's where you started with. I'm curious on what that looks like in more specific examples. Is it something like they're taking a psychedelic and assuming maybe that everything's supposed to happen in the psychedelic, and when it doesn't, they just move on to do it again or something like that, and they're not doing anything in between? What are the different variations and how that looks? Yeah, that's my question.
Yeah, I think you hit it right on the head. There's the peak experience without proper preparation and without work on the back end. And having the same experience really over and over is something that I've seen. And I think there's a leverage point with having these practices that also, paradoxically, I believe they invite us to go deeper into our experience as well, when we know that we have a container to hold whatever we come up with.
Cool. And one second question here. I had the same conclusion to you. I never went to war, but my sense when I was talking to vets when they would come back, I literally mentioned to them that when they're working through their PTSD, that it seemed to me, I was already doing a lot of my inner work. It seemed to me that the people who did have significant childhood issues going into war would probably have that war impact them way more, to where, obviously war can give you PTSD and give, in and of itself, obviously. So you mentioned that sexual trauma, but would you just wouldn't that be, would you generalize that to just any childhood trauma? Yeah, I guess
Yes.
that's,
Yeah, it's typically sexual is what we found, and I know that it is very pervasive in this in the psychedelic renaissance. 1 in 5 of us globally, I believe, are subjected to childhood sexual trauma in the early years of childhood development. And further on the point that you'd mentioned about veterans and that correlation, there's some staggering research that I cite in Worth the Fight that Sebastian Junger, the foremost expert on PTSD, homecoming, and belonging, he cites some disturbing research in his book Tribe that that the modern day veterans that fought in Iraq and Afghanistan are 2 times more likely to have reported childhood sexual trauma in the early years of childhood development than those that fought at random in Vietnam. And mind you, I said, report. And for anybody that knows anything about sexual shame and sexual trauma in men, we'd rather bite a bullet than actually share those hurts. So it's likely more pervasive than that even.
okay, thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Anyone else in the room? All right. Tim, go ahead.
Oh, awesome. Hey, Matt, I really appreciate that talk. The question I had was around microdosing. I'm wondering if you've come across research or your take on like when to cycle tolerance breaks or like breaks away from microdosing. I heard Dennis McKenna cite that there's been some evidence of like an impact to like 5-HTP sensors or something. I'm just curious on your take to that.
Yeah, I've been hearing that more and more, that idea of the potential dangers, the risks that we might find out down the road, years out from perpetual microdosing usage, and the way that is putting extra pressure or unneeded pressure onto our hearts. And yeah, I would think that taking a few weeks off would be enough to recycle. That's what I do. I cycle in and out and kind of just do it intuitively when I feel like I need a little boost. But I'll go weeks or even months without doing it, and it's fine. I don't feel like I miss it. But when I'm in challenging times, I'll kind of lean on that and know that there's definitely some major benefits that can come from the Stamets stack or from Fadiman's protocol.
Gotcha. Thank you.
I would say intuitively, but yeah, taking time to pull back so we can have the value from the microdosing. And I think if we're doing it all the time, we're gonna lose that value.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome. Matt, now there's a question from someone online named Vivian. If you could read it out to us and then answer it. Do you see it there?
Yes. In terms of integration, what I found is that it's a never-ending process. For me, it is always being distracted or not having enough time to dig deeper rather than ended on its own. What do you suggest to have a more monitored way of integration, and how do we know when to stop and get into action or ready for the next healing journey? Great question. I would get very clear again on how we're spending the first few hours of the day. I think that first 2 hours is a magical time. We're coming out of the deep slumber and having our phones on airplane mode, taking time to get still with our meditation, maybe doing some breath work, some movement, taking time to journal what's coming up, is going to cultivate the self-awareness, and it's going to have us more and more in tuned with our intuition and to know when is a good time to pursue a peak experience. I would say that there's at least on my path that I had a 3-year hiatus from peak experiences where I was so enthralled in this process of bringing more flow into my life, and I was feeling so much joy from the work that I was doing that the phone wasn't ringing, so I wasn't answering it. But I would say that if you are thinking about a peak experience, hold it with deep reverence, and to know that there's a, and this is tough because there's a line of fear that I think we should all have if we're going into a, when I prepare for a mushroom journey, I'm feeling it, and I'm deep reverence. I know that I'm going to get wrecked, and to know that this is something. Typically, I think that this might help with answering your question. I take about a 2-week period where if I'm continually feeling this urge that it's time, and this thread or this theme keeps popping up into my journaling, then I know that I have this data over the last few weeks that, hey, this is something that's on my heart. This isn't this whimsical, something that just hit me and whoa, I know that I need to do that. While the impulsivity that can work for some people, and that was how I handled this path for some time. Now it's more of a, I'm waiting for that slow hunch intuition. Yeah, so the self-awareness ultimately is going to give us that, it's going to help us decipher or discern what is the next step. And again, my most recommended practices for that are meditation with a journaling session afterwards, the Wim Hof breathing method, or another breathing method, and finding ways to get into our body, somatic practices of movement.
Awesome. Thanks, Matt. Any other questions? We had one more question here. Yeah, if you want to come up.
Hi, hello, happy birthday.
Hello, thank you.
I actually have 2 quick questions. The first one is, I know you work with veterans, and I was wondering if you have used mushrooms to treat any type of addictions to painkillers or opiates or anything of that nature, because in our city, Vancouver, there is a big addiction problem to many different types of drugs. And I was wondering what your experience was like using psychedelics to treat addictions to other substances.
To this point, in terms of the work that I'm doing while advocating for the Heroic Hearts Project, they're primarily working with ayahuasca and ayahuasca retreats. They found that is the most productive healing methodology for the veterans that are struggling with addiction and PTSD and depression. I know that our Navy SEALs here in the States, vets, Veterans Exploring Treatment Solutions, they're using psilocybin also with 5-MeO, and I believe that is, they're doing that in Mexico. But I'm sorry, I don't have the experience or the data in terms of mushrooms and the veterans, or mushrooms and addiction. I know that Johns Hopkins is doing a lot of work right now with the peak psilocybin experience and addictions, smoking cessation, and I believe there's all sorts of studies. They're studying everything right now, and the results are very, very promising. Upwards of 70% of people are shedding their diagnosis or shedding their habit of smoking. I think that was the case, or 80% it was a small study, 15 people, but 12 of the people they were addicted to smoking, and a year later they're not smoking. So that's pretty incredible results.
I also have another quick question. How do we balance the commercialization of psychedelics and holding them as a sacred medicine? Because I work in a dispensary, a mushroom dispensary, and sometimes it can be a little difficult spreading education and knowledge, because I really want to prevent abuse, because I really see this as a sacred plant medicine. So how do we balance that in this age of this becoming very commercialized?
That's a great question. And I don't necessarily have the answer. I'd like to stay in my lane and be very focused on pushing out Worth the Fight and the podcast and selling books to raise money for the veterans, to have them push us out into this unknown. In terms of commercialization, I write about this in Worth the Fight, the idea that, and I know that that's a big hot topic right now, but I believe the problems with these medicines is that they work, people get better, and no one really makes money. So I haven't given much thought. Again, I just try to stay grounded and focused on my checklist each day and showing up and serving my network the best that I can. But yeah, there's a lot to be uncovered here in the weeks and months and years to come. We're in a truly fascinating time right now with a lot of big dollars coming into this space, and definitely a point of concern.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so you have another section then?
Indeed, indeed.
All right, go for it.
In this next section, we're going to be talking about flow science and belief. This notion of and whether flow is here. I'm gonna get the actual. Let's see here. Sorry about that little false start. Flow science and belief: how flow might be the key to unlocking our greatest potential. Flow. I've been obsessed with flow since I had tapped into a macro flow state. I believe it was December 28th or 29th. In Costa Rica, back in 2014, when I had this deep, profound healing where my prefrontal cortex went completely offline, my inner shit talker completely offline. I was able to, see the path forward and all the ways that I was sabotaging my life and my health and my happiness and all the conversations where I was eating my words. And I've been very curious about flow ever since I heard Stephen Kotler and Jamie Wheel, I think it was early 2017 on the James Altucher podcast. I remember hearing these guys talk and I was thinking, geez, whatever they have, I freaking want it. And that was I was in a very vulnerable time and a suggestible time on my journey. Again, I was untethered, doing a lot of psychedelics, trying to figure out where I best fit in, and coming across the book Stealing Fire was deeply impactful and informative on my path. And the work that is being done, I'll give a little bit of a backstory around flow. It's in 1990 or in the late 90s, Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, he was a University of Chicago professor. He wrote a book called Flow and really kicked off this, or was part of this movement towards more positive psychology. I believe in the 90s, the Dalai Lama came over here and said, hey, you guys are just, studying all this neurosis and depression and the negative parts, or the quote unquote bad parts of the human experience. But you're not studying anything positive like compassion and joy and forgiveness and flow. I think would be considered a philosophy that is aligned with positive psychology. There's a powerful quote from Stephen Kotler that I want to read here. And this is from The Rise of Superman, where Stephen Kotler, essentially, it's our extreme sports athletes. They're the ones that ticked off the extreme benefit of flow and about how they were shattering their records. You see it on the X Games and how they've quietly, the records have been doubling. And he got very curious and he wrote a book called The Rise of Superman, I think Decoding Ultimate Human Performance. And this is a quote from that. How do we really know about true happiness, burning creativity, unbridled ecstasy? As children, we are taught not to play with fire, not how to play with fire. On the flow path, we are drawn forward by fire, by powerful hedonic instincts, by our deep need for autonomy, mastery, and purpose deeply fulfilled, by dizzyingly feel-good neurochemistry, by a spectrum of joy beyond common ken, by the undeniable presence of our most authentic selves, by a cognitive imperative to make meaning of experience, by the search engine that is evolution and its need for innovation, and by the simplest of truths. Life is long, we are all scared, and in flow, at least for a little while, we're not. So what is flow? the researchers would say that flow is the optimal state of consciousness. It's when we perform and we feel our best. It's when action and awareness merge. There's an acronym STIR that represents flow: selflessness, timelessness, effortlessness, and richness that is part of the experience. And why does it matter? I believe that that flow and this idea, the flow research, the flow science that supports that flow is a massively disruptive technology for the mind. The research that has come out of the Flow Research Collective that showed that people in flow have creativity spikes of upwards of 600% higher than those that are out of flow. There was a McKinsey study that showed that executives in flow are 500, or they report to be 500% more productive than those that are out of flow. There was a military study here in the States where they showed radio operators and snipers, they cut their learning time by more than 2. So learning twice as more efficiently while in a flow state. Those are massively disruptive numbers around creativity, productivity, and learning. And I believe, this is conjecture, but I believe that those are the numbers that allowed me to shed 90% of my trauma, 90% of the impulsive behaviors at root for my addictive behavior, my depression, my materialismitis, and allowed me to reframe my personal prison that I was in by, again, elevating my creativity, my productivity, and my learning. I was able to recreate and to create a better way out. And I think that of my personal hell of the mind, and I think that these numbers are supportive of what is going on with the MAPS work. The Multidisciplinary Association of Psychedelic Studies is in phase 3 clinical trials with our federal government here in the United States, and they have a cure for PTSD. The phase 2 data showed, and I believe the phase 3 data was even stronger, that 2/3 of people that have chronic PTSD, these are the most troubled of the bunch, that have had this condition for an average of 17 years, are having 3 drug interventions with MDMA, ecstasy, Molly, and the assisted therapy. There's 3 non-drug interventions on the front end, 3 on the back end, and 2/3 of them are shedding their diagnosis. And the data gets stronger after 3.5 years. This is an aggressive blow to that pill-a-day model that we've been fed and led to believe is part of the human condition and experience. I think it's been a big, while it works for some people, I think it's been a big marketing ploy by our pharmaceuticals that we need to have these pills, again, to be healthy, happy, and strong. And this is very exciting to see what might come from this. And again, it's conjecture on my end to say that the flow research and those numbers are underlying, but something is, there's something that's fueling this mechanism that is allowing people to reframe their past hurts, their traumas, to let go of those hurts and move on to be healthy, happy, and strong, and to live out the lives that they intended to live instead of being stuck in their personal prison of the mind. The exponential value of flow is very exciting too, on a collective level, on an individual and a collective level. I'd love to use an example here that is often used by folks that are talking about flow here. Ray Kurzweil, he is one of our most esteemed visionaries on earth. He's the director of engineering at Google, and that analogy that he uses of, if we take 30 linear steps, we're probably getting over to that stop sign somewhere within distance, 30 steps. If we take 30 exponential steps, we are around planet Earth 26 times. So that exponential, it's an explosive power. And I believe that psychedelic medicines, meditation, and flow states are exponential technologies for the mind, big data for the mind. And that is why I'm gosh darn excited about what might be possible. Stephen Kotler, again, his one, I've been enamored by his work. I've had him on the Worth the Fight podcast, number 15. And he had said this before the pandemic, that we're going to need the greatest collaborative effort from our species, the greatest augmentation of flow that we've ever seen, if we're going to get ourselves out of these pickles that we find ourselves in, the state of our politics, ecosystems dying, the climate crisis, the polarization in our society, now COVID, the risk of future SARS and viruses and whatnot. We got problems, and flow can help us solve those. And that is all I have about flow. And again, I'm trying to tie this all in towards, how are we going to get our human family to a peaceful planet in the next decade or two?
Excellent. Awesome. Any questions on this round? Any online? I think we keep rolling.
Okay, yeah, I think we'll go to the next part then. If there's no more questions here. Oh, we have a question.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah, thanks. I was just wondering how you see, if you could go into a bit more detail about how flow, like getting in a flow state, really helps with integration, and like more of like an experiential thing, maybe from personal experience.
Yeah, I think that the knowledge of flow and knowing that there's this very expansive research will enable us, or maybe empower us, to push through the discomfort of some of the practices that do bring in flow. This was a profound understanding for me about flow in relations to psychedelics, and the idea that people are getting into flow all over planet Earth in a myriad of different ways, from breath work to chanting to exercise to extreme sports to yoga to fitness to sexuality and sex. And in terms of the integration practices like you'd asked about, it's finding your edge and pushing that edge is something that I recommend to my clients, and to embrace the discomfort that comes from leaning into our past hurts. Again, with that notion that the degree to which we lean into our pain, our hurts, our traumas, our darkness is the very same degree to which we can stand and share and love in our light.
Thanks.
Hopefully that helps.
Good. Thank you.
Okay, I think that's it for questions. So we'll go on to the next part. Thanks, Matt.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Christoph. I'm going to lead this next part by reading a powerful quote from Thich Nhat Hanh. He's a Vietnamese Buddhist monk and global ambassador of peace. Veterans are the light at the tip of the candle, illuminating the way for the whole nation. If veterans can achieve awareness, transformation, understanding, and peace, they can share with the rest of society the realities of war, and they can teach us how to make peace with ourselves and each other. For me, that has been a driving, that quote is one of the reasons why I kick the covers off most days. And I've been so dialed into this non-for-profit veteran collective soul healing mission that I've been working on since 2017. The idea that our veterans are the ones to push these edges. They know that the degree to which they know darkness is unimaginable to many of us, and they know honor, they know integrity, they know courage. All of them are leadership trained. The idea also that they represent a here in the States, and I'm sure this holds true in other countries and in Canada as well, that idea that veterans are male, they're female, they're Black, they're white, they're Latino American, they're Indigenous American, they're Asian American, they're rich, they're poor, they're middle class, they're us. They represent the greater collective. And so looking at them, that this one subgroup of people as an exponential strategy, a hidden resource that there's some disempowering programs here about our veterans and some of the ways they're being treated with this pill a day model. And From Shock to Awe was a powerful film that came out a few years ago that showed two veteran families that were kicking the war chest of pharmaceuticals to embrace plant medicine healing and healing with MDMA assisted psychotherapy. And unfortunately, Matt Call, one of the veterans from that, he passed away a few weeks back. It was a freak accident. It's super tragic that he's passed on, and he left his wife and two young children. But his bravery and tenacious spirit that I write about, I highlight Matt Call in the closing chapter of my book, Worth the Fight, and his call to action. While he did not get an opportunity to run for office, I think that his spirit will live on, and will likely be the reason why I will get into politics at some point in my life. I envision that that idea of our storming our corporations, storming the government with we have a very strong democratic container, and doing things within that container, and infiltrating the system from within to change things. And these medicines are extremely powerful. And again, our veterans, they have the data that comes from the pain and the struggle, and seeing the deepest carnage, the deepest pain of the human experience gives me a lot of hope. What I've seen from the veterans and the way that they've been able to shift and heal, and they don't have to be told what to do. They grab on to service projects. They're very motivated. They know how to get shit done. I think that spirit is very helpful for the psychedelic renaissance, and is another reason why I'm very, very high on our veterans here, and believe that they are the ones to push this edge. I'd started advocating for veterans for entheogenic therapy. We ran into a buzzsaw in 2018, and we ran out of funding. And that was something that ultimately led to me getting really serious about writing Worth the Fight. And that's why I've written the book to share. I share my story only to the degree to which it tells a larger narrative of what might be possible. And our veterans, they bring up some really, really uncomfortable questions that don't have clear answers. And I think that's why this service mission and veteran healing in general doesn't get the proper credit or due that it deserves. Brings up that notion of 1 in 5 of us are subjected to childhood sexual trauma in the early years of childhood development. And I believe a lot of that comes from the Catholic Church. And just as I think Sam Harris says it best, that if we had any Fortune 500 company that habitually employed sexually confused men, we would run them out of town so fast. But with the church, we turn a blind eye, because they've got these very strong, fearful, energetic programs that keep us on the sidelines from engaging that. And I call bullshit on that. They're the top bullshit incorporated offender that I write about in Worth the Fight. And this pill a day model that again is under assault by the psychedelic renaissance and by MDMA assisted psychotherapy, as I believe we're going to shift away from this pill a day model. And there'll be a time in the next decade or two when we think back, oh my God, like what were we doing? How could we be that inhumane? And another offender of that is a little bit of a digression, is our Western industrial recovery complex or addiction recovery complex. It's a $40 billion a year business, and I call bullshit on that as well. There was a profound Ram Dass quote that I failed to read when we were talking about altruism earlier on, but I want to share this conversation that he had with Terence McKenna. This was in the 90s. This is a YouTube video that you can find online. They were in Prague and sipping espresso, doing a kind of a recap of what went wrong in the 60s and 70s. Where did we miss the mark? And Terence had asked Ram Dass this question, and Ram took a very long, deliberate, took a few minutes to think about it. And then he summed it up with these words. It was idealism and a sense of lurking righteousness. And I think that in order for us to move through successfully in this renaissance, we need to learn from the mistakes that we've made in the past. And for me, that's been an invitation to always keep my eye on serving others. I don't think that we can do any wrong when we are healing and using these exponential technologies for the mind, psychedelic medicines, meditation, and flow. And when we're using those to be healthy, happy, and strong and lead service-driven lives and to do the work that we're here to do. So that is a call to action for all of us to know that these medicines are powerful, and these state shifts are powerful, and they can illuminate a deeper purpose. For me on my journey, I know that having that deep, profound experience with ayahuasca, that visionary experience where I saw through my own eyes the greatest version of myself, and knowing, I've done a lot of studying of Napoleon Hill's work, Think and Grow Rich, and if we can see it, we can create it, and to know that we have these peak experiences. But we do the work in the day-to-day in the valley. And that's, how are we showing up each day? How are we embracing our practices? How are we treating each other? How are we having these tough conversations that, and so on. But, tying this back to our veterans, again, they know honor, they know integrity, they know courage. All of them are leadership trained. And we're in a precarious time where we need courageous doers. So I am pledging, or I am donating all of the profits of my book, Worth the Fight, $6 a book, $5 to $6 a book, that goes towards veteran healing. And I long for the day to share this on a Joe Rogan, and knowing that would sell 50,000 books right there, and that would equate to $300,000. We're raising money for veterans that are struggling with mental health and suicidal ideation. And that's my heart's plea for a better world, tying in the work that we can do on the day-to-day with psychedelic integration, tying in what might be possible when we're tapping into more flow and creating more of that, looking at our past hurts, our traumas, not as something negative, but as possibly our superpower or our greatest gift, and shifting that frame around the discomfort that comes from leaning into our edge, I believe is necessary for us to get the most out of these psychedelic experiences, again, so we can be healthy, happy, strong, and service driven, and do the work that we're here to do during these precarious times. And that's all I got.
Awesome. Thank
Any
you.
last questions, guys?
Yeah, the addiction recovery complex. Cynthia has a question about that. It's a $40 billion a year industry. And I don't subscribe to the, Dr. D. Jaffe, I had him on the podcast, Worth the Fight podcast number 13. And he wrote a book called The Abstinence Myth. And I think that is a BS Inc. limiting belief scarcity program, that either we are stone cold sober or we are a full-fledged addict. And as we know from these psychedelic experiences, there's a lot of gray area in the middle. and finding that, and we can find a place in that between 0 and 1, between the extremes, and find something that works for us. Further, that was the programming that kept me on the sidelines for the longest time, in terms of pursuing my healing, because I was fearful of being the neurotic guy that took his one addiction and put it into another one, and didn't face his stuff. But I think that we can do our inner work and find that balance, find that harmony, with all substances, with anything.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, Matt. I just wanted to see if there's anyone else who has any final questions. Yeah, Nikita, if you want to. We got one more question for you, Matt.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Hi, how are you?
Doing good.
Yeah, thank you for this talk. Okay, so it's really like a deep, profound, and I use this word a lot, but it like resonates with me deeply. But one question for you about the trauma. Okay, so we mentioned like about healing a trauma, which we acquired throughout our lives, or maybe childhood, right? But what about like an intergenerational trauma? Okay, because if you like some like nations, they went through like wars, right? Genocide, and some of them just rivals, right? And which is just. Do you think like psychedelics can, with the spread of psychedelics and Renaissance, can help us to heal those things in the world?
Yes, absolutely. I was listening to. Because of the work I do with our veterans here in the States, I listen to a lot of podcasts of the thought leaders that are moving the space, a lot of Rick Doblin, a lot of Michael Pollan, Tim Ferriss. And there was a Rick Doblin podcast where he had talked about the goal of MAPS is net zero trauma by 2050. And that is an aggressive goal, but and that's the power of, again, with exponentials, it's very tough to quantify when maybe that could happen much sooner, or maybe that'll take a lot longer. I don't know, but I do know that these are cures for trauma, and that generational trauma is something, and their MAPS is looking to scale this quickly, and to get this to be something that is adopted worldwide. And again, 2050 net zero trauma. That's a bold, ambitious claim. A world without trauma is a world without war, and it's something that I believe in Rick Doblin and his leadership, and would say that will definitely be confronting a lot of the generational trauma that we have in a lot of the war zones and these areas where they've been fighting for infinitum.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, awesome. Matt, I want to thank you so much for coming here and joining and sort of sharing all of this for us. And I know it's so important too, if you think about as well in terms of veterans, like so many of them that come back, they're physically intact, but that doesn't mean they're psychologically intact from everything that they've experienced there. And, being able to really integrate the psychedelic medicine and everything into this, I think is just hugely important. And I think, it's really commendable what you're doing, and all the sort of what you're helping financially, as well as really shining a spotlight on this. And I think it's really important to have people like you doing this. So I want to thank you for doing this, and especially again on your birthday doing this. It's so amazing to have you here for that. So if we can have maybe a round of applause once again just for Matt, just for doing this.
And Christoph, thank you so much for those gracious words. Can I take just a moment to plug the Worth the Fight podcast? We didn't get an opportunity to talk about that, but I'm 78 episodes into the Worth the Fight podcast. I've had Dr. Rick Doblin on the show. We've had Stephen Kotler, the author of Stealing Fire. Dr. Dan Engel is a world-renowned integration specialist. Dr. Chris Ryan, the author of Sex at Dawn. We've had Portugal the Man, the rock stars. They came out of the psychedelic closet on the Worth the Fight podcast. Had Leah Song, the front woman of Rising Appalachia, on the Worth the Fight podcast. They are loving the work we're doing. And Dr. Rick Straussman, the DMT spirit molecule OG researcher from the 1990s. And I also wanted to Your support of my podcast would be greatly appreciated. Again, we're earnest in our intentions to keep putting out content and to keep pushing this edge. But I also wanted to put out this an invitation to all of you to take me up on a free Fostering Flow discovery call. If this message resonates with you, we could do a deep dive and map out the path ahead to bring more flow into your respective life, to be healthy, happy, strong, and service-driven during these times.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Matt. I just want to announce too that so all the links that Matt's talking about, those are at the bottom of the event page, so you can just check them out over there. So there's his podcast and all that over there. So again, thanks so much for joining us, and thank you for everyone for coming. For everyone who's online, what we're going to do is we're going to sort of create a 1-minute intermission, and then we'll kind of break out into small groups. So those of you guys who want to stick around for that, just stick around for a chance to talk and to meet other people. And then for those people who want to close it off at this point, then you're welcome to disconnect from this point. So again, thank you everyone for joining us. We'll have the recording up and available soon too.